Hello, a very warm welcome. I'm Alexandra. I'm the leader and creative director of City of London Symphonia. So we find ourselves in another lockdown, although it does feel a little different than the first. First of all, I hope that you are all very safe and well. And I would also like to apologise because it appears our road is being resurfaced outside my house. So there might be a little bit of lorry noise going on. So I hope that doesn't disturb the interview that we're about to undertake. I thought lockdown would be a good opportunity to catch up with some friends, colleagues, collaborators of City of London Symphonia. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be talking to Gawain Hewitt, who is one of our very important participation leaders. So welcome, Gawain. It's just delightful to chat to you.
Well, it's really nice to be with you today as well. Thank you for taking this moment to be on Zoom. It's kind of a strange situation, isn't it? But it's so good to see you, and it's been a while.
It's fantastic to see you too. Have you been able, these past couple of weeks or months, to do some work online? Because a lot of your work is very hands-on, working with people, creating things. Have you been able to translate that online?
Well, yeah, we have, and actually with CLS we've done a lot of work in thinking quite carefully about how we do that. So myself and one of your colleagues, Matt, who plays viola in the orchestra, we've spent 8 or 9 days together sort of preparing and thinking about how do we get that sense of collaboration and sort of facilitation to work online. And this week we just did our first workshop off the back of that in Bethlem Hospital School. So yeah, it was a really good day, and felt good to be back, and yeah, we got some very good musical outcomes, so it was very exciting.
Fantastic. You work alongside, as you said, our CLS musicians in a number of settings quite regularly. Could you just tell people watching or listening about those different settings and perhaps the different challenges or the different aims that you might have going into those scenarios?
Well, I mean, with CLS, I work primarily in 2 settings. One is with the Bethlem and Maudsley Hospital School. So they're a school in a hospital. So I guess it's important to say that they are a school in themselves with a head teacher and a structure and all that, but they're physically situated within a hospital, in this case within a psychiatric hospital. So we're working with young people in psychiatric care. Some of them are inmates, which means that they're resident at the hospital, and some of them are day patients. And over the last few years, it's been at 2 sites, in Maudsley in Denmark Hill in South London, and at Bethlem, which is just near Beckenham in South London. But more recently, all the works at the Bethlem site. So, I mean, that work is, well, as with all the workshops I lead, really it's about people's right to be a music maker, and creating a situation where we have an environment where the players from the orchestra, the young people, any other adults in the room, and myself are coming together to respond to the repertoire that the orchestra is working on at the time and create some new music in response to that. So yeah, I guess I'm really interested in sound making, music making, what it means to give different people a voice, I guess, in that way. You asked me about context. So the other place I work is the Headway East project, which is in Dalston in North London, and they're a charity that work with adults recovering from head injury and their families and carers as well. And that's a sort of gorgeous place that all of us who go there, we sort of, the minute you get there, you feel at home. It's such a wonderful project that they run. We're lucky enough to go in there regularly. It's normally annually we go in and do a project, and again work with these incredible adults to create original music. Again, we're thinking about what CLS is doing as an orchestra at that time. And of course, both these projects, one of the things I really enjoy doing is I get asked to make an installation that takes this music and allows us to share it in a way that's, I guess, tells the story. In fact, I was talking to the head teacher at Bethlem just the other day, and he was saying what he found so exciting about the work we're doing is that it's work with young people who are in psychiatric care, but we're not focusing on the mental health as a difficult time. We're focusing on the the humanity that still exists within all of us. And that made me think about, actually, and I guess in this time of COVID, this is really important to think about. We all have mental health, and that is difficult to talk about, and something that is still sometimes stigmatized and we have shame around. But actually, as I thought about this with the head teacher, I was thinking, well, actually, this is a really affirmative message that at whatever stage you are in, with regards to your mental health, there is still the creative spark. There's still that sort of joy and humanity, and that's what we're bringing out through music with these projects.
We'll talk about, you mentioned your wonderful installations. I might come back to those a little bit later. But you used the word joy there, actually, which I particularly associate with somewhere like Headway East. It's a very special environment. There are some amazing characters there that sort of stay with you for a long. I mean, you obviously know a lot of them quite well now. I think I've only been in once or twice, but they stay with you a long time afterwards, just because of their sheer enthusiasm and love of sort of music making and being in this amazing atmosphere. Could you, for someone who's not experienced a day at Headway East, who hasn't been lucky enough to, could you maybe just talk us through what might usually happen on a typical project day there?
I think the first thing to say is the way it is structured is a flat structure. So the project itself has staff, obviously, and then you have volunteers, which are normally people who have or still are receiving, maybe receiving is the wrong word, but are still parts of the community of people accessing the facilities at Headway East. And then you've got what's called the members, the people who maybe for a day or 2 days a week go there for the program. And superficially, and sometimes not superficially, it's impossible to know who's who. There's no kind of uniform or name badges or anything like that. So you come into this environment that's extremely kind of egalitarian. If you come in for the first time, normally one of the first things that happens is one of the volunteers will show you round, and you'll get to hear often a very powerful and moving personal story around their experience of head injury, how that's affected them, and what it means to be a member of this community. This also involves lots of tea, often lots of wonderful rambling conversations and social interactions. And we'll then sort of find ourselves a little corner, or if we're lucky, a room. And myself and the players, normally we have 2 players on this project, and often a third member of staff as well. So there'll be 4 of us. We'll go and find somewhere, and we'll just think about, how it feels today, run through the day, before getting a room set up. Now, the project itself, we'll do some kind of rounding up of people and sort of reconnecting, and there are adults, there are members at this project who one of the symptoms of their head injury is memory loss, and I am not an expert at all, but my experience of this tends to be that short-term memory loss is the problem, not long-term. And so there are members that I get on very well with that I have to reintroduce myself to, even as often as 4 times an hour, certainly every week, and say, hi, I'm Gawain, I'm here from CLS, we're doing a music project, you came last week, you really enjoyed it, I really enjoyed working with you, would you like to come again this week? Which is, that's an odd thing, that's not something you'd normally do in life, but there's something very lovely about it as well. We then set up a room with a variety of musical instruments, which range from electronic instruments through to tuned and untuned percussion. I've got a few unusual things, like I've got a cello with a single string, which I often use. And then we wait and see who turns up, and that's there's never a straight answer to that question. In fact, this is true in Headway East and Bethlem and Maudsley hospital schools. You get told there'll be 5 and you'll get 14, or you get told there's 14 and there'll be 3, and that's just this just goes with these kinds of settings, I guess. That there's an awful lot of you have to be very flexible, because there's many other things going on, I guess, in the background that can influence where someone is that day and how they feel. Now, in terms of music making, If it's a session I'm leading, it can be anything from, sometimes we'll have someone come in and just start doing something, and that triggers off sometimes things that last for up to half an hour before we've even said hello to each other. And at other times, it will be perhaps something more expected, like me introducing myself and my colleagues, and us playing a piece of music and us responding to that, and anything in between. But I guess the focus for me is always, how can we encourage the people we're working with to lead the music making and feel they have a voice, and that we can then verbally or non-verbally reinforce that and take it somewhere. These sessions at Headway East, they're an hour long. They often feel like they go past in 15 minutes. There's a real energy, and there's certainly a huge volume at times of exuberance. Tambourines shaking, massive voices singing joyful songs. But at other times, very surprising and moving, reflective work, sometimes with poetry, sometimes thinking very explicitly about their lived experiences, and other times just reflecting, say, on an image in the mind, perhaps imagining a landscape or something. So and then the lunch. So then we sort of we end, and there's because we're working with people who are disabled in various different ways, depending on their head injury and how that's affected them. We'll start to have people coming in who might be assisting them to get out of the room, or they'll just be like, "It's lunchtime, I'm going." And now there's another group of members who are working with a daily project there. Well, I don't know if project's the right word, but I guess maybe it is. In a way, it's similar to what we're doing. They've got a professional chef who works with the members and volunteers to make incredible food, and this has become what they do for lunch. I don't think this is how it started. So this is what it is now. And so every lunchtime you have the most astonishing lunch, which has been created by another group, some of whom might come and see us for a short time. So we'll have this amazing lunch, which is, I think, this is just a real sense of belonging. We'll sit down with them. There's almost, not only do we not sit apart, but it'd be almost impossible to. There will be sort of scattered chairs around the room where we'll just sort of break up our little City of London Symphonia group, and we'll go and sit around and just talk to people. And then in the afternoon we'll continue, sometimes with more music making, sometimes with some art making, or a mixture of the both. So there you go. That is a day in a project at Headway East.
I think you sold it to everybody. It is. It's true.
I wish we could invite people to something like this.
Yeah. Well, we should make a film, perhaps, of the day, because it is this amazing mixture of community and collaboration and creation. And yes, the thing that struck me when I was there was how much the individuals in the music making specifically led the process in a way, and you had to be flexible. You couldn't sort of have a rigid plan, because they would take it off in a direction, and then you just fly. And there's so much enthusiasm and love for what they do that you can't help but be sort of transported along by it. That's what really struck me when I've been there.
I think you're right, and maybe that's what we're trying. That's also what we're looking for in all these projects, is to find that love and joy, and catch it and take it somewhere, and inevitably that is formed through a relationship between the CLS players, myself, and the members on that day, who they are and where their heads are at, and that will be different each time. I've had times where we've had members singing advert theme tunes and a CLS player playing them back. That has been what we've done for 20 minutes. Just the joy. I cannot overstate how joyful that. I mean, it might sound a little bit weird, but it's not. It's incredibly joyful. Yeah.
You mentioned before your wonderful installations, which in themselves have become a bit of an institution, I would say. Most times towards the end, or the aim of a project is to create either a sculpture or a sound installation which sort of collates various creative processes that have happened. And I remember specifically at Headway East, it was a flotilla of rubber ducks, which we decorated. That was tremendous fun. And then somehow you managed to get the recording inside one of these ducks, I think, and they were launched down the canal. I mean, first of all, what an amazing thing to have that sort of legacy, that tangible item, I suppose, to show for all their work and their enthusiasm. But secondly, how do you come up with these amazing ideas? I mean, who would have thought of rubber ducks going down that canal outside Headway East?
Not just any rubber duck; they were huge. So I mean,
they were massive.
For those listening,
and they were named, weren't they?
They were. I can't remember their names right now. No, I'd have to look them up. But if you imagine a normal yellow rubber duck, but maybe I don't know, the size of a watermelon. It was that kind of. It was
they were
big things. I can't give you a good answer to that good question. Where do I come up with these ideas? I think maybe that's where my head is as an artist, and this is what I'm practiced at and good at, is coming up with quite different ways of presenting music and art. They just come to me when I'm wandering around. And one thing I learned a long time ago when I was in my early 20s and was thinking about developing ideas, someone taught me to make a note of ideas always. And the metaphor I was encouraged to use was of a shelf. You just sort of put down enough details and you just stick them on a shelf like books. And then later on, when you're thinking about when a context comes along, you just go back to your shelf and go, right, so look at all the ideas I've logged, and then you pick one out. So that's the sort of process I use. But yes, it was a lovely project, that one, and I had to get in the canal in waders. That was the. I brought waders in case it all went horribly wrong, but then the members were very adamant that I was getting in the canal, being that I had waders. So maybe that's the thing that I remember the most. I managed to get a radio-controlled mallard to tow them with, which I still have somewhere, which is a very unusual thing. But somehow someone was selling one on eBay. Someone had made one, and just coincidentally, I managed to buy it and get it working again. So that's what towed these ducks. Yeah.
I love your idea of having like a sort of a bookshelf of ideas which you might not use now necessarily, but later on, the correct context might display itself. I think that's good advice for anybody creating something.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that it worked. I've been very lucky that I've been given context by CLS and others to realise my ideas, and I think being able to, in some way, action an idea is also very important as well. So it's having, I guess, throughout my career, I've been very lucky to constantly have my ideas acted on. So I have many on the shelf, but I guess that's why I keep putting them there. It's because I know that they do get used. Yeah.
Well, we're very excited at CLS because, of course, this year we've been nominated for 2 RPS Awards, one of which is the Impact Award. And you are a huge part of that, in essence. It should be for you as well, Gawain. The Impact Award being, I suppose, making a positive influence on people's lives, perhaps, or encouraging them with classical music when they might not otherwise have the opportunity. It struck me that impact is a very difficult thing to measure or quantify. How do you show how you're impacting people or affecting their lives or affecting their mood? But then I also thought it's difficult to talk about your own work, but you are perfectly qualified to talk about it because you see very often the same people for a few weeks in a row at these various settings. And just from sort of watching how they change or respond or develop, that's proof enough of the impact your work, the work of CLS musicians has on them. What do you think are the main things? It might be different in each place, but what are the main things that you hope people take away from a creative experience with you?
Well, I think the thing if we think about the work that's happening at Bethlem, that's specifically being considered for this nomination, I'd say one of the things that really helps is the importance that you, as the creative leader, and the other teams of leaders at CLS give to this project to start with. So, in many other cases, there's a case of this sort of, it can feel like community or whatever you want to call this work, it can feel like a bolt-on. It can feel like it's somewhere over on the sidelines, and that is not the sense I get ever at CLS. I feel like we are central and it's important. And as I said earlier on, we're working to the same artistic brief that you are as an orchestra. So we're given a very sort of serious brief, if you like. You know, it's this matters. We value you, and we're going to give you a platform. So then, when I'm leading the workshop, this isn't an education project or an outreach project. This is an art making exercise. This is a music making exercise. We are actually composing right then to a brief, and then CLS are going to celebrate it later on as part of their program. That's how it feels to me. So I then bring that kind of seriousness or that intent to my interactions, and I can honestly say that the feeling I get from making music with these groups is the same I get from making musical art with anyone, and that makes me feel better. You know, I make art and music because it's just within me, and the more I practice it, the more I realise that this is partly defines who I am. So if I can give that experience to the group, which is what happens, then I know that that's also affecting them as well. Now, you say about the way they change, it's complicated. Ultimately, if we're thinking about Bethlem and Maudsley, we're thinking about young people who are at a real crisis point in their lives. And while we nearly always see them at their best, and that's really important to state, in the background there is still very unusual and socially difficult behaviour and other characteristics of poor mental health being exhibited in their lives. And so, yes, we can see a progression, but also sometimes you can see the opposite, which has got nothing to do with us. So there can be situations where you hear of quite alarming things, and you have to be reminded maybe by the staff that you're working in a psychiatric hospital. So in terms of the impact, it's just sort of some wonderful quotes I've had back, like, it was lovely to forget I was in a hospital. I mean, when you've been in these places, and so that's maybe not a phrase I'd want to use, but when you've spent time in a hospital, it can sometimes just feel a bit heavy, and to have someone turn around and say, I forgot I was there for an hour, that's actually really powerful if that's where you live at the time. So yeah, I'm not sure if I've answered your question at all. I've just sort of weaved off.
No.
It's like you pointed me in a direction, and I'm not sure if I've gone the right way.
No, the point is, it's a hard thing to answer in a way. That's what I'm saying. It's difficult to, you can't show a graph to show how much impact you've had on people. You can just go with your feelings and your emotions, and as you say, how you feel, and you hope that they too, or at least some of them, feel the same way about the experience, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what I was trying to say about the artistic feeling of this. We know as professional artists when it's good, and it feels good in these sessions most of the time. So there is that sense of we bring our kind of very practiced and well-honed artistic kind of intuition, I guess, which you cannot measure. This is so hard to measure, but you leave it going, this has been an important act of music making. I haven't made music at them, and they haven't sat and listened to me. We have made music together, and I have paid attention to you, and you have paid attention to me. And some really surprising things come out of that in terms of really gentle, delicate, reflective work that's, exploring some of the real fringes of music and, sound making and silence and noise making and conducting and leadership and composition. And yeah, it's deep and exciting. Yeah.
Now, not just with CLS, but with all your work, you are very experienced in diverse settings and working in very different ways. I wonder if there are any areas that you're still keen to sort of explore, or particular settings, or maybe places where you feel there's not enough of this sort of creative music making going on and people could perhaps really benefit from it? I mean, this is, in general of your work.
Gosh,
that's a deep one to end.
Quite the question there. Wow. I think maybe the best answer I have for that is I'd like to see a broader idea of what music making is generally across people's experience, because I think we're very good at teaching music and providing an experience in one way, but if people don't fit that, I think people can leave that experience feeling that they don't have a right to be a musician. So it'd be really nice to see, and I don't necessarily know how this could happen, but if we could have other experience of music making, which perhaps made people feel more confident. I've been thinking a lot more sort of recently, and this is about how music is good for you in the way that, say, exercise is good for you. And an example I keep using is, I am terrible at playing football. And yet we all understand that if I go and play football as a bad football player, it is still good for me to play football. We know that. We know it's good for me to move. It's good for me to develop my team building skills and all that kind of stuff, and to deal with success and failure. And I'm increasingly of the mind that music making is good for you in the same way, that you don't have to be good at making music for it to be good for you. And so I'd love for there to be more opportunities for people who aren't good at music making, or who don't think they're good at music making, is perhaps a better way of putting it, to partake in creative music making. I think it would be really good for society and for the individuals.
And particularly at this time where, it's good to remember our mental health, and also what is good to make us happy. I mean, there's so much terrible news at the moment that actually we need to focus a little bit internally, I think, sometimes, and focus on our own families, our own bubbles, and make sure that we're happy. And as you said, actually, before we started the interview proper, that we're all happy and well. And those are the main things for all of us, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's really true. And I know that I can sort of bear witness to emotions that I find maybe difficult or impossible to express through speech, through the act of sound or music making. And sometimes just me sitting down with my clarinet, or with voice, or with guitar, or drum machine, or anything, I can be changed by that experience, particularly if I'm doing it with someone else. So I think it's I'd love there to be kind of maybe that's what we should do next, Alex. You and I, we could come up with like the sort of couch to 5K. Maybe we should come up with some.
Yes.
Sort of don't tell anyone. Don't let's not broadcast this on some podcast or anything. But we could have sort of from I don't know. We'll come up with it. This is it.
Watch this space. With something, I would have to include an installation though. It would have to end with that, something amazing, something mega. Oh, thank you so much, Gawain. It's just been an utter delight to talk to you. Thank you for giving your time. And as I say, I look forward to seeing the fruits of your next projects. Are you starting? You started back already. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah.
We're one workshop in. We've got another one next Wednesday, and then the Wednesday afterwards, all at Bethlem Hospital School. And then I think we're going to another school in December as well, and back to Headway East in the new year. So
fantastic. We look forward to lots more amazing creative experiences with you. Thank you on behalf of CLS as well for all that you do to empower our musicians. And your work is very important for the people at Headway East and Bethlem Maudsley School, but it's also important for the musicians, I think. And sometimes when we think about impact, we think about the impact on the people we're sort of taking our product to, but actually the impact on the people delivering it is sometimes just as important, I think. So thank you for all you've done to help the musicians. And take care, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. See you soon, Alex. Cheers.
Bye.